On today's episode, I want to take a closer look at my top 5 buys for 2025 in the semiconductor industry. Not only that, I also kind of want to explain some of the other stocks I own in my overall portfolio for the semiconductor market and why they did not make the top 5 list. But before we get started, make sure to hit the thumbs up, make sure to hit the subscribe button, check out the pinned comment for a special offer at fool.com/Jose, and check out my daily free semiconductor newsletter, What the Chip Happened, if you want to keep up to date to the semiconductor space.
I want to thank the Motley Fool for sponsoring this video, and check out fool.com/Jose for the 10 best stocks to buy now. With that link, you get a promotional offer for the subscription service. Now, let's continue with today's episode.
All right, so I'm not here to hold you hostage. My top 5 buys for 2025 are AMD, Lam Research, On Semiconductor, NVIDIA, and Micron Technology. Now, if I want to be honest on a top-level overview, the reason for this is I believe all these companies can benefit one way from emerging technologies. Now, for each of these industries, I'm going to showcase some information, but AMD, quick one-on-one on it. I believe AMD right now at the stock prices is sitting at today, and obviously when I release this video, the stock prices might be a little bit different. But anything, in my opinion, below 150 for AMD is very, very attractive. I mentioned it in previous episodes where I don't believe AMD is the next NVIDIA, and I could care less about that. But the AI market is growing at such rapid levels. AMD is moving in the right direction. I have seen AMD do really well with Lisa Su, and I think Lisa Su is going to do really well with taking opportunity here in the AI space. So I think AMD's MI400 is going to be a great product coming out a year and a half from now. And in the meantime, they're going to continue to be heading in the right direction, even if the stock is not showing that. So AMD for me is my number one buy because of the great valuation and what I see the growth opportunity. Again, I don't believe this is the next NVIDIA, but the MI300 has opportunity. And AMD also has the opportunity to enter into the ASIC, custom silicon AI accelerator market, very similar to Broadcom. So AMD is number one in my list. Again, this doesn't mean the stock is going to do well right now, but in the long term, I believe the opportunity is there for AMD. Now, number 2 on my list is Lam Research. For those that are not familiar with Lam Research, this is a company that deals with the manufacturing equipment of semiconductor solutions. And Lam Research is taking another hit today. We can see year to date, the stock is down roughly 37% from its all-time highs. I believe that the semiconductor industry is going to see a huge revolution, not only because of the demand for AI chips, but we are kind of transforming into new types of manufacturing process as we're going below 2 nanometers. So that's going to be a nice tailwind for equipment companies. The other kind of tailwind for equipment companies is just countries worldwide are wanting to reduce their dependency of Taiwan. So we're seeing things like the CHIPS Act, things like the European CHIPS Act, and similar all over the world. So we're going to continue to see a growth in the semiconductor equipment space. I think the equipment market is very, very undervalued right now. And I am going to explain later on in today's episode some of the other equipment players that I own. The equipment market there's so many different processes to manufacturing semiconductor that it might look like I'm holding a semiconductor equipment ETF, but it's just that there's no actual equipment space to really just be all focused on. I think this whole industry as whole is undervalued. So I'm trying to get the best players in different segments within that industry. So Lam Research is number 2. And again, I believe in the undervaluation right now. They have huge opportunity in the memory space that is going to continue to grow as we continue to see the advancements of AI technology. Now, number 3 is On Semiconductor. Now, On Semiconductor, while it's not kind of your typical AI play, On Semiconductor creates power chips that go into kind of motherboards, that go into AI servers. And as that's growing, that's going to help be a nice tailwind for On Semiconductor. The stock right now has a market cap of roughly $28 billion. If the robotics industry takes place in the next few years, On Semiconductor can be a huge winner here. The other thing is On Semiconductor is critical with EVs in forms of power solutions needed for the electrification of automobiles and also things like sensors for things like autonomous driving and advanced driving solutions. So On Semiconductor is in an industry right now that is being hurt a lot with things like interest rates. But in the long term of things, I think On Semiconductor is going to be a very, very popular company, especially if we're seeing the growth demand in AI power demand from servers, right? Server power is requesting more power. You need better power solutions. On Semiconductor can help with that. If the robotics market, like I mentioned, can grow, On Semiconductor can benefit from that. If the overall electrification continues to grow, even though it's in a stalemate in the automotive space right now, that can also be a huge benefactor for On Semiconductor. So On is my number 3. Now, number 4, I do this on a daily basis, talk about NVIDIA. I don't think you need to understand my reasons to be bullish on NVIDIA. NVIDIA is just a powerhouse when it comes to the semiconductor space. I've always mentioned throughout my videos that NVIDIA is one that gives opportunities to the patient investors. I personally am not a fan of NVIDIA at this time, anywhere above 140s of me adding. I am very, very willing to wait because it's already my number 1 position of purchasing NVIDIA if it goes to the 110s. That is where I would find a lot of attractiveness. In the 120s is also pretty attractive. Right now, in my opinion, is very small dollar cost averaging. But remember, this mindset might be clouded because NVIDIA is already my number 1 position. So I get the ability to be very, very patient on when I add. And some might say, Jose, you're not going to see 115s. You're not going to see 120s. That's okay if I don't get it because it's already my number 1 position. But I get to be patient. I mean, we were seeing NVIDIA at over 145s about a month ago, and no one thought we were going to see 130 so quickly. We even saw the mid 120s just a few days ago. So NVIDIA is going to be my biggest position. I have no intentions of selling, but when opportunity comes knocking, it's one that I would be willing to add more into. And that's the main reason the stock made it as number 4. Now, if we look at my number 5, this is Micron Technology. This is one that I'm just thinking of adding right now after the company reported earnings, and the stock is down roughly 17%. The memory market is going to do amazing. It's going to have multiple tailwinds in the next few quarters. I think everybody is overlooking how big of a player this is in the AI space. There's not much competition in HBM right now. It's pretty much a SK Hynix and Micron market as well. Now, that would be scary if the HBM market was standing still, but it's not. It needs to continue to innovate. We need to go to HBM4, HBM4E. So you need a company that's innovating at rapid levels. It seems Micron and SK Hynix are the two doing that. Personally, I'm not buying Hynix because it's not traded here in the United States. Micron has the opportunity to grow, and I believe with the recent sell-off, Micron is making a great opportunity to buy anywhere right now for me. Again, these are my semiconductor picks, and the semiconductor picks can be very, very cyclical, and things like tariffs and stuff like that can hurt off the stock dramatically. If big tech sells off, you usually see a heavier sell-off in the semiconductor market. It just tends to happen because it's so dependent within that space. But in the long term of things, I'm looking here not for the next quarter, not for the next 2 quarters, but for the next year or two to continue to see my values, my investments grow. Micron Technology, in my opinion, is one that can do really, really well at these values. Now, those are my top 5s, but there's some other things that I want to mention. So I'm holding right now, but not adding to MRVL. MRVL is very, very crucial for the ASIC space. We've talked about MRVL below $60. Now it's sitting over 110. I believe right now the market might be a little bit too excited in the ASIC market with MRVL and Broadcom, right? Broadcom is also one that's been very excited in the past month or so, seeing a huge, huge run up. I believe there's an opportunity for ASIC solutions, but I'm not going to chase, right? MRVL, I added with this in the 50s, in the 60s, right? That's where I have my core positions. Right now, I'm saying, hey, look, I'm holding on to you because I do believe the ASIC market can grow and the networking market can grow, but I'm not willing to add for you at this time. That may change later in 2025 as we might get better opportunities. Now, one boring way, and I always get this question, Jose, what semiconductor ETF would you buy? To be honest, I think semiconductor ETFs are pretty much the way to go. I mean, if let's just pull up Y charts real quick and just look at the price action of a semiconductor ETF versus the the overall market, the SPY, you're going to see that historically, while the semiconductor market is more cyclical in forms of normalized returns, the semiconductor ETF tends to be. In the past year, obviously, semiconductor has outperformed even with huge swings. In the past 3 years, let's see what's the case. Oh, look, semiconductor ETF has outperformed the overall S&P 500. Let me see in the 5 years. In the past 5 years, oh, look, continuing to outperform. In the past 10 years, I wonder what has changed. Nothing. The the semiconductor market continues to outperform the S&P 500. Personally, if there was only one stock I could own, it would actually be a semiconductor ETF. I know most people would do something like the S&P 500. While it is very cyclical, the future of the world's innovation from everything that we're grabbing is focused on the semiconductor industry, and that's why it's leading. Obviously, in the short term, volatility is going to hit the semiconductor market a lot harder. In the long term, I believe this will be a market winner. And you might be like, Jose, yes, the S&P 500, anything can beat the S&P 500, so why don't you do the Qs? Let's take a closer look at the Qs. Boom, outperform. 5 years, outperform. 3 years, guessed it, outperform. 1 year, guessed it, outperform. So again, if I was to only be able to hold one stock, it would be a semiconductor ETF. I personally go with either SMH or SOXX. Both tend to have low ratios, expense ratios, nothing too crazy, nothing that I would cry about. Both are under 0.5%. I think SOXX is a little bit cheaper. Now, the final thing I want to mention is the other stocks that I own in the equipment space. I actually own 8 stocks in the equipment space. For me, I see this as one basket, right? Instead of seeing it as 9 different stocks, if you include Lam Research, I see it as one position in the equipment space because they all hit different plays. And I believe the semiconductor equipment market is sitting at strong lows right now. All these companies, like we saw Lam Research, have taken a huge hit from their peak. But in the upcoming years, we're going to see continued growth in semiconductor manufacturing as either we're seeing more fabs being built globally or we need to advance into new chips overall. So the other 8 outside of Lam Research that I own are On2, CAMT, Nova, BE Semiconductor, KLIC, Air Technologies, KLAC, and I guess I put KLIC here too already. So it's actually 7 that I would buy, and I already have Lam Research, so I have about 8 positions there. So many people might not want to own all those stocks, and that's a-okay. I personally believe that all these can be great winners in the long term for my portfolio. But if I was only looking for one, that's why I went for my top 5. My number 2 would be Lam Research. And that would be the only one I would buy if I was only buying 5 companies. But I personally believe the equipment makers are very undervalued right now. And earlier I mentioned if there was only one market that I can buy, one stock that I can buy in right now, it would be a semiconductor ETF. I would say if there was one segment within the semiconductor space that I would like to buy, it would probably be the equipment space right now, as I believe there's a lot of opportunity there. So overall, those are just my thoughts. It would be such a long episode if I was to talk about all these companies individually. So I really wanted to look more in a top level overview, and I hope you enjoyed that. But to me, all these are going to benefit dramatically from the AI space and all the tailwinds that we're seeing in the semiconductor market. Now, those are my top 5s for 2025. Those are the ones I'm going to focus on in the semiconductor industry. But typically, I also do invest in other AI stocks. Before the year ends, I'm going to probably break it down and just pick my top 3 overall stocks that I'm buying this year. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Again, most of my positions are in the semiconductor industry. I don't really hold too much stocks, especially if you count kind of this semiconductor basket as one company. This is how I view it. But outside of that, there's not too much. I usually hold kind of like the cloud providers, There are a few small caps that I own that I believe can benefit dramatically. But the semiconductor space, that's where I feel I have the little bit of an edge on most retail investors and what I like to really, really invest in. So take care, have a good day, and see you all next time.